The summer heat shimmered like a vengeful mirage over Jake Martinez's once pristine backyard, now a testament to bureaucratic madness and one homeowner association board member's vindictive crusade. What had once been a beautiful suburban oasis, complete with a custom-designed in-ground pool that had cost Jake nearly $75,000, now looked like a construction site from hell. It all began 3 months earlier, on a seemingly ordinary Tuesday afternoon when Marlene Whitmore, the most notorious board member of the Pinewood Estates Homeowners Association, rolled up in her gleaming white Lexus SUV. Jake had been lounging by his pool, enjoying a rare moment of peace after a grueling week at his software engineering job, when she marched across his meticulously landscaped lawn with a manila folder clutched like a weapon. "Mr. Martinez," she called out, her voice as sharp as the creases in her pressed khaki pants, "we have a serious violation to discuss." Jake's stomach dropped. He knew Marlene by reputation, a retired accountant in her mid-60s who had seemingly dedicated her golden years to micromanaging every square inch of the neighborhood. Neighbors whispered that she measured grass height with a ruler and kept a detailed log of every exterior paint chip and landscape deviation. "Your pool deck," she announced, not even waiting for Jake to fully stand up, "does not meet Section 7.3, subsection B of the Pinewood Estates HOA bylaws." Her finger jabbed at a document she pulled from the folder, her manicured nail practically puncturing the paper. Jake remembered installing that pool deck himself 2 summers ago, spending weeks carefully selecting each stone, ensuring perfect alignment and drainage. He had meticulously matched the color and texture to complement his home's exterior, even consulting a landscape designer to ensure everything looked perfect. The deck wasn't just functional. It was a work of art that had been the centerpiece of his backyard renovations. "I'm sorry," Jake said, trying to keep his voice calm, "but I received approval for the deck plans 2 years ago." The board signed off on everything. Marlene's lips pursed into a thin, disapproving line. "Temporary approval. The current board has reviewed the documentation and found multiple infractions. You have 10 days to bring the deck into compliance or will be forced to take action." What Jake didn't know then, what he was about to discover in the most horrifying way possible, was that taking action for Marlene Whitmore meant something far beyond a simple warning or fine. This was personal. This was war. The next morning, Jake would wake up to find official HOA notices plastered across his front door, each one more threatening than the last. But nothing could have prepared him for the nightmare that was about to unfold, a nightmare that would transform his dream home into a bureaucratic battleground, with his beloved pool and yard as the first casualties. Little did Jake realize that Marlene Whitmore was about to wage a campaign of architectural terrorism that would make most HOA disputes look like minor disagreements. His carefully constructed life was about to be torn apart, one concrete pour at a time. The first signs of Marlene's retribution came swift and merciless. Within a week of their confrontation, Jake returned home from work to find a crew of contractors swarming his property. Heavy machinery rumbled across his carefully maintained lawn, crushing the decorative border plants he and his late wife had planted together. "What the hell is going on?" Jake demanded, storming up to the foreman, a burly man with a clipboard and a look of practiced indifference. The foreman, sporting a Pinewood Estates HOA logo on his hard hat, didn't even blink. "Official remediation orders, sir. We're here to bring your pool deck into compliance with HOA regulations." Compliance. The word had never sounded so much like a threat. Jake's lawyer, Tom Richardson, was equally stunned when Jake called him that evening. "They can't just do this," Tom muttered, the sound of shuffling papers audible through the phone. "I'll need to see the exact documentation." But documentation meant nothing to Marlene Whitmore. By sunrise the next morning, Jake's beautiful custom stonework had been jackhammered into oblivion. Where once there had been carefully laid travertine tiles, chosen to reflect the warm tones of his Spanish-style home, now gaped a battlefield of broken stone and exposed earth. The real shock came when the contractors began pouring concrete. Not just any concrete, but a stark industrial-grade gray that looked like it belonged in a highway construction project rather than a residential backyard. Jake watched in horror as they systematically obliterated every inch of his carefully designed outdoor space. "This isn't regulation repair," Jake told Tom during an emergency meeting. "This is destruction." Tom's face grew grave. "There's something else. These concrete pours, they're destroying your pool's drainage system. This could cause serious structural damage." What Jake didn't know was that Marlene had a personal vendetta brewing. Rumors in the neighborhood suggested she had been eyeing his property for years, not for its violations, but for its prime location. The Pinewood Estates HOA had recently been approached by a local development company interested in consolidating several properties, and Jake's lot was the crown jewel they needed. His neighbor, Frank Rodriguez, pulled Jake aside one morning during this chaos. "Watch your back," Frank whispered, glancing nervously over his shoulder. "Marlene's not just enforcing rules. She's clearing the way for something bigger. The concrete continued to pour. Jake's beautiful pool, once a sanctuary of summer memories and family gatherings, was being transformed into an unrecognizable wasteland. And Marlene Whitmore watched from her perfectly manicured front yard, a satisfied smile playing at the corners of her mouth. Little did Jake know, this was just the beginning of a battle that would test every ounce of his patience, financial resources, and will to fight. The legal battle erupted like a pressure cooker finally giving way. Jake's lawyer, Tom Richardson, filed an emergency injunction against the Pinewood Estates HOA, detailing the excessive and seemingly malicious destruction of Jake's property. What should have been a straightforward hearing became a Byzantine nightmare of bureaucratic maneuvering. Marlene Whitmore arrived at the courthouse looking every bit the picture of suburban propriety: pearl earrings, a crisp navy blazer, and a leather-bound folder that seemed to contain enough documentation to sink a small ship. She sat directly behind Jake, her presence a silent threat, radiating an aura of calculated malevolence that made the back of his neck prickle. The hearing room was a study in institutional beige, fluorescent lights casting a harsh glow on the proceedings. Judge Eleanor Martinez, no relation to Jake, listened with visible frustration as both sides presented their cases. The HOA's legal team had constructed an elaborate argument based on microscopic technical violations, each more absurd than the last. Mr. Martinez's pool deck extension exceeds the permitted square footage by precisely 2.3 inches, droned the HOA's lead attorney, a thin man with wire-rimmed glasses and a voice that could put insomniacs to sleep. Furthermore, the materials used do not meet the precise specifications outlined in Section 14.2, Paragraph C of the Neighborhood Covenants. Tom leaned in close to Jake, whispering, "This is ridiculous." They're essentially arguing over millimeters. But ridiculous or not, the legal machinery was grinding forward. Jake discovered that Marlene had meticulously documented every perceived infraction, including photographs taken from various angles, satellite imagery, and what appeared to be hand-drawn diagrams measuring every conceivable aspect of his property. The real bombshell came midway through the hearing. Frank Rodriguez, Jake's neighbor, had quietly gathered evidence of his own. During a recess, he slipped Tom a USB drive containing something explosive, emails that suggested Marlene Whitmore had a financial stake in a real estate development project that would benefit from clearing out certain properties in the neighborhood. "Follow the money," Frank had muttered, his voice low and urgent. "This isn't about pool decks. This is about something much bigger." Jake's world had become a labyrinth of legal documents, HOA regulations, and what was beginning to feel like a personal vendetta. His once peaceful life had been reduced to a battlefield, with his beloved home and pool at the center of a war he never asked to fight. As the hearing adjourned without a clear resolution, Jake caught Marlene's eye. She offered him the subtlest of smiles, the kind that suggested she was 3 moves ahead in a chess game he didn't even know he was playing. Outside the courthouse, the summer heat pressed down like a physical weight. Jake knew this was far from over. Something much larger was brewing, and his pool, his sanctuary, was just the first casualty in a conflict that was about to get much, much worse. The next 2 weeks were a descent into bureaucratic hell that Jake could never have imagined. His property, once a source of pride, now looked like a construction site abandoned mid-project. The concrete pours had created an uneven, grotesque landscape that destroyed not just his pool deck, but the entire ecosystem of his carefully maintained backyard. Tom uncovered the first major breakthrough during a late-night research session. The development company behind the potential neighborhood takeover, Horizon Acquisitions, had a disturbing pattern. They've been systematically targeting properties in neighborhoods with strict HOA regulations, using obscure bylaw violations as a wedge to force homeowners into selling. They're predators, Tom explained during an emergency meeting in Jake's half-destroyed living room. They find properties with any potential compliance issues, then use HOA boards as their attack dogs to force property sales at below market values. Jake's investigation took an unexpected turn when he discovered Marlene Whitmore's connection to Horizon Acquisitions. Her nephew, Michael Whitmore, sat on the company's board of directors. More damning still, bank records showed a series of suspicious transactions that suggested a kickback scheme tied to neighborhood property acquisitions. But Marlene was no amateur. For every piece of evidence Jake and Tom uncovered, she seemed to have a counter-move prepared. Additional HOA citations began arriving daily, some so absurdly specific that they bordered on harassment. A citation about the exact shade of his mailbox paint. Another about the height of his front yard shrubs. Another questioning the structural integrity of his fence. The psychological warfare was deliberate and precise. Frank Rodriguez became an unexpected ally. A retired investigative journalist, he had a network of contacts that proved invaluable. "These people think they're untouchable," Frank told Jake one evening, spreading out a collection of documents on Jake's kitchen table. "But everyone has a weakness. Their investigation revealed a darker picture. Horizon Acquisitions had already successfully forced out 3 homeowners in neighboring communities using similar tactics. Jake's property was strategically important. It sat at a critical junction that would make a future development significantly more valuable. The pool, Jake realized, was just the beginning. As July turned into August, the Texas heat became unbearable. His once pristine backyard was now a wasteland of half-finished concrete, exposed piping, and destroyed landscaping. The pool, his $75,000 investment, sat like a wounded animal, partially filled with stagnant water and surrounded by industrial-grade concrete that looked completely out of place. Marlene Whitmore continued her campaign with the precision of a military strategist. Each day brought a new challenge, a new citation, a new attempt to break Jake's spirit. But what she didn't know was that Jake Martinez was not about to go down without a fight. Something had to give, and soon. The breakthrough came from an unexpected source: Jake's teenage daughter, Emma. A computer science prodigy with a knack for digital forensics, Emma had been quietly watching her father struggle. While Jake and Tom pored over physical documents, she'd been conducting her own investigation in the digital realm. "Dad," she said one evening, her laptop screen filled with a complex web of interconnected spreadsheets and email threads, "I think I found something big." What Emma uncovered was a digital trail that connected Marlene Whitmore to a network of real estate manipulations that went far beyond Pinewood Estates. Using her advanced coding skills, she managed to decrypt a series of encrypted emails that painted a damning picture of systematic property manipulation. The evidence was meticulously documented. Horizon Acquisitions had a playbook: target properties in neighborhoods with strict HOA regulations, identify homeowners with potential compliance issues, and then use board members like Marlene to systematically force property sales. Jake's home wasn't just a random target, it was a carefully selected piece in a much larger real estate chess game. Tom called in a forensic accountant, Sandra Reyes, who began tracing the financial transactions. The paper trail was complex but not impenetrable. Each breadcrumb revealed more about the intricate scheme designed to strip homeowners of their properties at below-market values. Meanwhile, the destruction of Jake's property continued. The once beautiful backyard now looked like a war zone. Neighbors began to take notice, whispering about the ongoing conflict. Some were supportive, others fearful. Nobody wanted to be the next target. Frank Rodriguez started reaching out to other homeowners who might have similar stories. A support network began to form with Jake at its center. What had started as a personal battle was transforming into a community resistance. The local media caught wind of the story. A young investigative reporter, Lisa Chen, began digging deeper. Her initial story about the HOA's aggressive tactics went viral on local news channels, drawing attention to the predatory practices of Horizon Acquisitions. Marlene Whitmore, for the first time, looked nervous. During a tense HOA board meeting, now open to the public due to mounting pressure, Jake presented the evidence Emma had uncovered: spreadsheets, email chains, financial records, a digital arsenal that exposed the systematic manipulation of homeowners. The room fell silent. Marlene's facade of bureaucratic righteousness began to crumble. Her nephew Michael, realizing the potential legal exposure, distanced himself from Horizon Acquisitions. The carefully constructed machine of property manipulation was starting to break down. But Jake knew the fight was far from over. Marlene and her associates wouldn't go down without a fight. This was just the beginning of what promised to be a long and complicated battle to reclaim not just his property, but the integrity of their entire community. The summer heat continued to beat down on Pinewood Estates, but a different kind of heat was now building, the heat of exposure, of justice finally finding its way to the surface.